This is our homeschool co-op Skillshare with City Roots, which is a local homeschool co-op in St. Louis. This is part of our co-op Skillshare series on our community education, where we share experiences with other co-ops either in St. Louis or around the country. So I can start by introducing the three of us. My name is Chris Wilcox. My pronouns are he, him.
My name is Zondi Barrett. I use she, they pronouns.
And I'm Jenny Murphy, and I use she, her pronouns.
And we are Cooperation St. Louis. So our guest today is Michelle Perinella Cason from City Roots Homeschool Cooperative in St. Louis, Missouri. So to go over about what we are doing in this presentation today, what we will do is briefly introduce the concept of co-ops and co-op values, present City Roots experience and expertise, have a Q&A time for Michelle to answer your questions. We might do is just discuss similar models and cooperatives, identify where learnings and systems could be replicated. And what we won't do today is give professional financial advice or define a model that works for all types of co-ops. So these are real quickly, I'm going to go over our community agreements. First is nobody knows everything, but together we know a lot. Be curious and open. Speak from your own experience. Take space or make space, asking why am I talking or why ain't I talking? To kind of encourage people who maybe talk a lot during the conversation to maybe give some space to other folks and folks who don't talk as much to maybe give some space for them to contribute as well. We can't be articulate all the time. Give the benefit of the doubt and ask questions. Confidentiality, don't use specifics if you don't have permission or don't want them to be shared later. A cooperative or a co-op is a self-governing group of people who voluntarily work together to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. And the three main components of what makes up a cooperative: they are member controlled, or member owned, member controlled, and member benefiting. And co-ops are generally try to uphold a set of principles. These are adapted from like the Rochdale Cooperative Principles. They are still the principles shared by international associations of cooperatives and the U.S. Federation of Worker Cooperatives. They are voluntary and open membership, education, training, and information, autonomy and independence, democratic member control, concern for community, member economic participation, and cooperation among cooperatives. So the three that we are focusing on today for our presentation are education, training, and information. I'm talking about an education cooperative in itself, and the purpose of the Skillshare is to share the expertise and experience of others who are interested in co-ops or part of the co-op movement. Concern for community, so talking about meeting community needs and not contributing to things that harm the community, uh, as a commitment for cooperatives and cooperation among cooperatives, so that cooperatives work together to create a thriving ecosystem, so that they can mutually prosper and support their community. So why homeschool co-ops? So it provides opportunities to learn from a wide variety of subject areas and activities, as opposed to what you might typically think of a homeschool situation. Provides community opportunities for friendship and socialization. Shared contributions for each family. Each family leads or supports a different co-op experience or course, as our guest today will elaborate on. So, just a quick question for the folks who are attending today. What co-ops have you interacted with? Some that you might not have, even some that you might not have realized were cooperatives, like credit unions, or they're grocery cooperatives, or Prairie Farms is a local example of a cooperative for producers of dairy products. So, if you have any examples that you can think of, any cooperatives that you have interacted with, you can type them in the chat.
Michelle says, I've done grocery co-ops in the past and bank with a credit union. Abby says City Greens, they're a City Greens member, and that they bank with a credit union as well. And then credit unions, says Chris, and other homeschool co-ops, food share co-op, and artist cooperatives. Cool.
So, as we get along with our presentation today, if you have any questions during during the presentation, type them in the chat. We'll record them and make sure that they're addressed during the Q&A portion. And so today I would like to introduce our guests from City Roots. It's the homeschool co-op that offers classes and social opportunities to build city-based, sustainable, and supportive community.
Everybody, thank you so much for having us today. My name is Michelle, and I also have with me Chris and Abby, who are also members of our governance committee. I thought I would start by just a quick overview of what City Roots Homeschool Cooperative is and how we got started. And then I'm really excited to take your questions and tell you a little bit more about what we do and how we do it, and also just kind of hear ideas about co-ops generally and learn from this community. So City Roots Homeschool Cooperative is a city-based co-op that started in 2018 and probably late 2018, early 2019, which meant that we got going right as everything shut down for a while. So it's been a little bit of a bumpy start. But we are now about 35 families and about 60 kids are in our current co-op. And it's been a really excellent experience for us. To have this community, and it's been getting bigger, and we've got kind of different cohorts of kids at different age groups that have really gelled, and it's just a really enjoyable experience. So I thought I would start by just kind of explaining the need for homeschooling for a lot of people, because I think that there are some misconceptions about homeschool and some stereotypes. Some of them I had myself before I found myself unexpectedly homeschooling. So from my experience of being in the homeschool community here in St. Louis, people come to homeschooling for lots of different reasons. Some of the time they're just struggling to find a good educational fit for their kids, just in terms of being able to meet their needs, whether that's address gaps in their education or to meet the needs of an advanced learner who isn't being challenged enough. Sometimes it's just about family philosophy and wanting to, spend more time with their kids than they would get to if they were kind of in a traditional school situation. A lot of times, especially for our co-op, it is about neurodivergence and kids not necessarily being able to get all of their needs met in a traditional classroom. Sometimes it is safety, especially around marginalized identities. We have a lot of LGBTQ plus members in the homeschooling community at large. Maybe these are places where, especially in some of the current legislation atmospheres, where kids don't always feel safe in a traditional school setting. And so there are lots of different reasons that people come to homeschooling. Sometimes they're just doing it for a semester or a year as a transition period while they find another situation. Sometimes it's something that they've planned to do from the beginning and do it all the way through, and anything in between. So there are a lot of different people homeschooling in kind of different configurations throughout their kids' lives. When we started City Roots Homeschool Cooperative, there were a group of us who all lived in the city who really sort of recognized a gap in the opportunities that there were for homeschoolers in our area. For one, there are not that many secular homeschooling co-ops. I do think that has grown in the time that I've been a homeschooler, but it is still hard to find in many places. And this is especially important if you care about your curriculum being secular, because a lot of times if you join a co-op and it's not a secular co-op, it's not just a matter of like the members having a difference of opinion. It's also a matter of what educational materials your children are going to be learning from. And so we wanted to make sure that we provided a co-op that was secular and using secular curriculum. We also wanted to make sure that we had a co-op that was city focused. A lot of us had talked about how we had found co-op opportunities, but they were very spread out and we were spending a lot of time driving. It felt like it was a lot of commuting, and as people who had chosen to live in the city, often for, reasons of sustainability and transportation and just kind of being close to our our community, we felt that that was a need to have something that was in the city and rooted there. And then also flexibility. There are some co-ops that exist that have, you know, like half-day programs, or you sign your kid up for the entire semester and you're promising to show up at the same time at so many days a week. And we noticed that a lot of people wanted community and opportunities for their kids to have like a cohort of learners, but weren't necessarily looking for that much structure and that frequent of a meeting. So those were really some of the gaps we were trying to fill when we started our co-op. We have a mission statement that is, we are a welcoming group of homeschoolers embracing diversity and offering secular classes and social opportunities to build a city-based, sustainable, and supportive community. As we were starting the co-op, those of us who were the founding members met frequently to go over these documents and really, we really spent a lot of time figuring out our missions and values and how we would operate in a way that would put them into place. And so our guiding principles are that we are secular. We teach exclusively from a secular perspective so that we can offer a welcoming space to families of all and no faiths. We are diverse. We celebrate diversity and the strengths of different perspectives by representing and welcoming members from various marginalized groups and identities. And we are city focused. We recognize investment in urban centers as a core component of a sustainable environmental future for our children. And we value the diverse human perspectives and opportunities available in the city of St. Louis. So with those principles in mind, we've kind of built out our overall structure that we hold a weekly park day. And that's often the first contact that people have with us. They'll attend a park day and just kind of get to meet us and see if we're a good fit. We hold a group of classes that meet every other week during the fall and spring semesters that are like multiple classes going on simultaneously, which is often a good place for people who have not taught in a co-op before to kind of get a feel for what a class could look like and get to practice it by being like a second adult on duty in one of those so that they feel more comfortable with teaching a class of their own. We host parties and events for community building and to give some of the things that kids would have in a traditional school setting that they might miss out on if they, you know, like Halloween parties and dances and meetups and things like that. And we also offer a spring and fall semester catalog. So we have like a deadline for people to submit their classes and events. And then we put those out so that everybody has a deadline for when they need to enroll. And then we do a lottery style enrollment to kind of help ensure fairness in enrollment and that everybody gets an equal opportunity to be in those classes. And our offerings are all member led. We do occasionally have somebody who like brings in an expert and, you know, maybe they'll have like a fee to do that, but they're mostly member taught. And it would, if it's like that kind of expertise thing, it's usually like a one time, like we're going to go to a field trip and listen to this lecture or things like that. Most of them are members taking on sharing their own expertise, or we might share and buy a curriculum together and then use that to teach. And so it is mostly a member led, the actual curriculum and the work of teaching. Our membership is $25 per family per year on a sliding fee scale, and that is primarily to cover sort of our just structural needs. Like we have a platform that we offer the classes on, things like that, and then we'll dip into those funds for like, you know, supplies for a party. We don't have a lot of costs. We try to keep the cost as low as possible. We try to do a lot of volunteer work, a lot of pooling together supplies and things. And we ask members to adhere to our policies and procedures, and then they can have one semester where they don't have to offer anything. But then after that, we ask everybody to offer at least one class or event per semester or be a second adult for one so that everybody is contributing something to the co-op. In terms of those rules and policies, we require at least 2 unrelated adults at all in-person classes. Events must be in St. Louis City unless the location is the point, like if you're going on a camping trip or something. This really kind of helps us keep to that principle that we wanted this to be something that is available for people who live in the city. Class materials must be secular, non-discriminatory, and legally licensed. Class enrollment cannot be selective other than like for age, or, you know, you can say like, I'm only teaching this age group, but you can't just handpick students to be in your class. It has to be open to the lottery system. And classes should be affordable. You can charge like a fee for supplies, but teachers are not allowed to charge for their own time for the co-op. The co-op is the time, right? Like you're investing in it. Our governance structure is that we have elected non-hierarchical governance committee. We meet monthly, usually online, and we create deadlines for catalogs and approve those submissions. So we just kind of manage the structural part of it to make sure that everybody knows when to submit their classes. We run the lottery part to tell people what they've been enrolled in. We communicate, what events are happening and things like that. We also hear grievances and make decisions about outcomes if there are any complaints about violations of our policies and procedures. And we review and revise those policies and procedures as needed based on whatever's going on in our community. And yeah, I think that's kind of it as the overview of what we do and who we are. And I know me and my fellow governance committee members would be happy to take some questions.
Awesome. So we're gonna go ahead and head back to our slide deck just for a second before we get into questions. There we go. So yeah, we're gonna open our question and answer portion of today. So if you have a question you'd like to ask, you can put it in the chat. You can put a question mark in the chat and that will invite you to come off mute, or you can, raise your hand on Zoom, any of those methods to get our attention for any questions. I'm gonna go ahead. I've got some questions that we pre-prepared, but as we get questions, we'll move on to participant questions as well. So one of our pre-prepared questions, we're curious about what it took to start the co-op. How many people were involved at the start, and what kind of resources maybe were available? What did you use to launch the co-op to begin with?
Chris and I were both there at the beginning. I don't know, Chris, do you want to say anything about what we did to get started?
Yeah, I feel like there were so much discussions. It felt like this painful negotiation of every tiny little thing. We were really, really intentional about it. And in retrospect, I think you could say that maybe we over anticipated or over prepared for a lot of things. However, when the pandemic hit, we already had a health and safety policy in place. When things came up, issues between members, we already had a mediation plan in place. So I think maybe we didn't need to do as much negotiation with each other as we did, but it did come in handy. And we have since then simplified our documentation quite a bit. But I liked having a lot of it there. There were 4 of us, right, that started it, and 3 of the founding members are still members. Another one has moved on, and I just feel like it was so much talking.
It was a lot of talking. We also looked at samples of like governance documents from other homeschool co-ops and not even homeschool just co-ops generally, that any place that had them posted visibly on their websites. We looked at several of those to kind of get ideas of what content we might want to include. We looked for some models to help us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I just want to highlight Jenny's comment in the chat that we value over-preparedness. I know sometimes it can end up being a lot, but I think it's useful to have, like you said, you had that health and safety policy ahead of time, and it came in handy even if you later decided to simplify things.
Yeah.
All right. And I see Abby also left a comment that these intentional policies and preparedness is what led Abby to choose City Roots among many other homeschool co-ops. All right, I'm gonna now bump to Jenny's question in the chat, which is wondering if there are a lot of homeschool co-ops that are religious. I think you mentioned that earlier. Did you use their model for your co-op? Also, did anyone have experience with working at or starting a co-op before?
I think.
I was just going to say that we, both Michelle and I had been in a co-op before, and we had been in the same co-op. I feel like there's actually quite a few co-ops in Missouri for homeschool, And I think we are one of two that are secular. Is that right, Michelle?
At least in this, I think there are some in Kansas City that are secular, but in like our region, there's really only two big ones that are secular.
Yeah. And a lot of the religious co-ops that I remember looking into really did have sort of a different philosophy than we wanted. They tend to, we have a flat power structure in the governance committee, and that was really important to me at least, and I think the other people too. And I'm not exactly sure why, but you tended to see more of a hierarchical power structure in the other co-ops, and they were just different, and a lot of them were just biblically led. I mean, there were a lot of Christian co-ops that were specifically based around a church or something like that. So
And I would also say a lot of those other co-ops just structurally were creating more rigid academic like set, like they'd be like, oh, we're meeting 3 days a week to do Bible class and math and reading. And
yep.
we our co-op, while we do have some very academic offerings, like Chris has put together, we have a whole day, and Abby and I both teach in these, where we have our high schoolers and older middle school students meet for an entire day of academic, like structured academic work, and then they work on it between each meeting. So I mean, they are really like getting credit bearing classes, but that is not a requirement to participate in that to be part of the co-op. Like there are people who just come to park days and parties and field trips, and they're really just in it so that their kids can have that community and have other kids as playmates, and they're not really necessarily doing the schooling part as part of a group. They're doing that independently. And so it was really important to us to have a co-op that offered that flexibility. And a lot of the other models that were out there seemed, at least in my opinion, to be a little bit more structured around a shared academic model. And we wanted to be able to allow people that had different academic approaches to all still come together in community for those social aspects.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. A follow-up question is, do you find that co-ops are common structures for homeschool students, or are there a lot of students who just completely go independently?
It's hard to tell, I feel like, because we're familiar with all the homeschoolers who are in co-ops, but I am constantly surprised to find families, even in my own neighborhood, who I'll be talking to and suddenly find out that they've been homeschooling for 7 years or something, and they haven't ever joined a co-op. So I think when you've got homeschoolers who are out there going it alone, they're not super visible. State of Missouri doesn't have a registration for homeschoolers, so.
And I do think that a lot of the ways that people find out about co-ops and join them are word of mouth. So if you're not already connected with a network that's involved, I feel like it can be hard to figure out where to get started. I know that there's a Families for Home Education is kind of Missouri's like network of homeschooling support, and we have a regional director, and so they try to like keep track of like lists of activities and events for people. So if you've gotten tapped into that, you might find a co-op that way. But in my experience, most of it is word of mouth, running into somebody at a library event and being like, oh, you homeschool, I homeschool, and then finding out that this is what they do. So I do think a lot of it is organic, which by its very nature sometimes makes it exclusionary without meaning to be, because if you're not tapped in to that group already, you don't always hear about the opportunities.
I think that's too why the religious homeschool groups tend to get so big, is because they're already tapped into often a church community.
I guess leaning off of that question, how do new members, how do you find they're typically finding City Roots?
Abby, do you want to talk about that? Because I know you've done some, you were at our table for the
Yeah, I did the homeschool fair in, where was that, in Maryland Heights most recently, and there was probably, I don't know how many homeschool groups there, but it was a lot, a surprising amount of tables. I mean, there was a few tables that were there just to promote Like the Wild Bird Sanctuary was there. There were some things like that that were resources for homeschoolers, but it was mostly groups. And as you said, we were one of two non-religious groups. Um, we had quite a few people sign up, but I don't know that they all ended up following through to coming. I think most of our group has been through I guess word of mouth and also the Facebook groups on online that are specifically just for homeschoolers in Missouri. I think that's how well, I met Chris, but I also had seen something about it in one of those groups. And I'm sure that's where a lot of people are finding us. I know Michelle has replied to a lot of comments over time from people who are curious about our group. And I do really think it's worth emphasizing that I think a lot of the appeal of our group is that it is secular. I was a homeschooled kid growing up, and for religious reasons. And a lot of the reasons that I knew of people homeschool, actually, the only people I knew who were homeschooled were specifically to avoid secular spaces. So I think that is one of the things that makes our group really unique because not only are we secular, but we are still inclusive of when we have families who are of different faiths, but our curriculum is centered around just academics. And I think that is what makes it special. But again, it's mostly through word of mouth. I do wonder if there's other ways that we could reach people beyond what we've done already, but a lot of it has just been through community. I don't know if you guys would agree, but
Thank you.
Yeah.
that's been my experience.
I just want to reiterate that if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat or come off mute. But we'll keep asking some of these questions we have on our backlog. So our next question that I know we're curious about at Co-op STL is obviously you've mentioned that all members take responsibility for some kind of course offering or support, but I'm sure there's also a lot of administrative responsibilities and tasks involved in making sure that everyone works together. So I'm curious about how you divide up those administrative responsibilities and how those fall.
I just want to shout out Michelle that she does so much for our
Yeah.
group.
Yeah, I was
Anything.
gonna say, yeah, unfortunately, a lot of things that would fall through the through the cracks are picked up by Michelle.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have a group chat where we kind of I mean, it's very busy. We're in constant communication around things that are happening with the group, and we meet monthly. And Michelle, there's actually two Michelles that I feel like do a lot. But the Michelle in the room specifically does quite a bit for our group. And then we had a new governance member join recently who has transformed our relationship to our software, especially with like the treasury type stuff, because I think we were all like, I don't know, like a little bit lost. It just felt like very confusing to figure out how this software worked. It's specifically for homeschool groups, but she just jumped right in and like figured everything out in a day, and we were all pretty blown away. So it really is just a shared, like if you can, you can. And if you can't, the real like I have never felt judgment um from anyone if I wasn't able to step up and grab something off our docket. But it seems like it feels very equitable to me. I really appreciate the environment that we've created.
I would say I think that one of the things that we've done is just kind of been honest with our community about like if we can do what we can do, and the more that people want to step up and offer things, the more that will get done. But if that's not the right season for this, or if that's not something we have enough hands for, then we can always kind of scale. Like I think we have sort of a minimal up, like we are going to offer a weekly park day, we are going to offer these community events, we're going to have this space available for these regular classes each semester, and then from that point forward what's going to happen is going to depend on what people bring forward. And I think that just being really honest about that with our membership, that's like, this is not something that has been designed for you. If you want it to happen, you're going to have to do that, and we're here to answer questions. And we start lots of like threads of people being like, hey, who's looking for something, who has an idea about something, who needs somebody to help them, and they've been able to come together that way. But I think a lot of it is just that non-hierarchical, like, look, yeah, you want something to happen, make it happen, right? Like we'll help you have the framework for it, but you can't have when you have 60 kids, you can't have a governance committee of 5 people knowing the individual needs of all of those kids and being able to set up something that it's going to meet all of those needs, especially when most of the people are in the group because they have a very unique set of needs and expectations and wants for their kids' education. So I think more than anything, the service that we offer is bringing people together so that they can find another set of families that are doing something similar and kind of have that little bubble within our larger umbrella. And I think a lot of that happens at like our park days, like people sitting together and chatting and hearing like, oh, you're looking to do this, so is my kid, and now we have a D&D club, or you're looking to do this, so is my kid, now we're going to the zoo on Saturday, right? Like I think that a lot of it is just providing a structure for people to see what's possible and what they can do together.
Yeah, I think that like what you're describing, I think one of the cool things about how the non-hierarchical structure that we have makes it really low pressure for people to be a part of our community, and at the same time equally makes it very empowering for you to participate in the community because it feels really approachable. I know I felt that when I first started, and I've heard other people say similar things, and I love that about our group.
I'm in a different group that says that they are a do-ocracy. Like if you want it done, then go for it. And although we've got a little more regulation than that, I feel like that's sort of the vibe, right? Like we leave things open for people to make what they want of it.
Our next question is, do you kind of have a goal or a cap for the number of families you want to reach in terms of membership, or is it flexible?
That's a good question. I don't think we don't have a cap. And I don't think we've ever had a conversation of like, is there a number that we would hit that makes this, unsustainable or where we need to split off or anything. I do think that one thing that we've noticed is that a lot of us who were the founding members, because it's now been several years, our kids are getting older. And so one of the things that happens with homeschool groups just naturally is that even if your kid is still homeschooling, by the time they get to like where they're doing dual enrollment or they're doing these more structured activities, you often just aren't involved in the same way. And so it's been really important to me to try to bring in some members that have younger kids because I would really like this important resource to remain as part of the community, even as some of us who originally started it are kind of aging out, so to speak. Um, and so I think I personally have some goals around bringing in membership that's going to allow that kind of long-term sustainability.
I think that being city focused also gives us a bit of a natural border. I mean, we do have people who come in from the county, but I don't really anticipate the need for, any type of a hard cap just because, the city's only so large.
Yeah, and I would say we could always like create subcommittees for different age groups if we needed to. Like if it got so large that we felt like it was becoming unmanageable, we could have a catalog for each age group and put a group over in charge of that using the same structure. So I think that our governance has some built-in ways that we could scale up if we needed to.
Yeah, I agree.
Have you faced any challenges in running the co-op?
No, it's been completely great. No, we've definitely I mean the pandemic was a huge challenge. It took the wind out of our sails in a major way. I remember we were meeting weekly. We had a group of kids who were meeting weekly.
Two different age groups were meeting. Yeah.
Two different age groups were meeting morning and afternoon classes, and the shutdown coincided with our spring break. And we were like, oh, this is great. By the time the shutdown's over, our spring break, like what good timing for us. And then we didn't see each other in person for like a year and a half. So so that was definitely a challenge. Just keeping the moment. I mean, we lost a lot of members. We lost a lot of members who wanted to go back in person earlier than our governance agreed. Like our health said, like we had those policies in place and we were like, no, this is not, we are going to follow what's being recommended by the state. We are going to follow what's being recommended by the CDC, and we don't think it's safe to meet in person indoors. And we lost a lot of people who looked elsewhere for that earlier than our group was able to provide. Some people just, aged out or went back to brick and mortar school. So like it kind of really hollowed out some of our membership and some of our momentum. And so in some ways it felt like starting over, but with this like kind of bloated set of policies for a thing that didn't exist anymore. And so that was a challenge for me, just kind of figuring out how to navigate that. But I think we did it successfully. I think that we just kind of started slow, and we started with some virtual offerings. We tried to keep connection as much as we could, and then sort of built back up as people seemed responsive.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that was the most challenging time for me too. It was disheartening. Yeah.
Are there any lessons you've learned through your experience with City Roots that you think could apply to other youth programming, whether it be more traditional school structures or after school programming, anything like that?
I don't want this to sound negative, but I think that having a focus on safety and being upfront about potential behavioral issues and interpersonal conflict and things like that before things happen, and before there's a name attached and a cute little face that would never do anything like that. I think it's good to have sort of solid policies and procedures around those types of things that can get so emotional, so that when something happens, you are able to step back and really have faith that you are being fair, because that can be so hard to do in the moment. And I feel like we did that, and I feel good about that. And I definitely, in working with other groups since forming City Roots, have certainly pushed for that same type of approach in other things, not just in youth programming, but for adults too.
I would say that a piece of advice I would have, especially when working with young people, but probably just when working with any people, is to have kind of a hub where you can all be together, but to also let people kind of separate out and find their things. Because I think that one of the things that makes our group work is we've got a lot of quirky kids, and when those kids can figure out the other kids who are into the thing they're into and really dive deep into that, that's where you see like a lot of flourishing of their self-confidence and their creativity. And I think if we were trying to push them all to do the same thing at the same time, we wouldn't get to see that.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate those are all of the kind of questions that we have. So I wanted to open it up if there are any questions folks want to pop off mute, or put anything in the chat for additional questions you might have.
I have one question kind of related to what Chris was talking about, but like, can you give an example of like maybe a policy? Like I think what I was hearing is it's sort of like stuff that y'all have in place around like kind of like conflict resolution or kind of in that realm. Is there a particular like tool or structure that y'all use that has been really helpful in that? Or let me know if I'm off base in like interpreting what you were talking about, but
Well, obviously with like conflicts and issues, I can't get, too specific, but I think
it's
that
less about the actual conflict, but more about like
yes,
a tool or a policy that you use.
yeah, having a reporting structure that feels safe is important, like having various methods of reporting an issue, because not everyone, especially when you're dealing with quirky people like us, not everyone's going to feel comfortable with every method of reporting an issue, and having clear enough policies and procedures so that somebody can point to one or more things that they feel maybe need to be addressed, you know, in a book, or that we can find in the book. And then I think we had, and I don't know if this is all as still is laid out, but we had some mediation guidelines with a real step-by-step procedure of, you know, we need to have this stuff done and then go to this part. And, you know, it was a 5-step thing that would help bring parties together and actually try to resolve the conflict, but also left space for, you know, sometimes if a rule is being broken, or, you know, habitually, or something has happened, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes the solution isn't to force a couple people together who don't want to be together. I don't know if that, Michelle, do you have?
I would add to that, and I don't want to give the impression that we have to use this all the time, but I think that having it there, I think, makes people feel more comfortable to join if they have had negative experiences in other systems, so that they know that there is there is a method to report if there's a problem, and there is a method to see a solution. And one of the things I think we've done is that we've sort of tiered a potential response. And again, I can't even think of any examples where we've had to use this, but it is written in that there could be a situation where maybe, like, if there's been a safety issue, and so maybe there are now only supervised, like, maybe this particular person, this particular child has to be there with a parent. They can't do drop-off events, but there's not necessarily like oh, you have had an issue, so now you're out. So I think that makes people feel like there are some, you know, like, steps that are going to try to address issues without just turning straight to isolation. And, like, a real simple example, a lot of us that are on the governance committee also teach classes because we're all very involved. So we make sure that we put in there that, like, if you're having a conflict with a teacher, you don't have to, like, you can report to the governance committee member who is not that teacher, right? Like, we want to make sure that, you know, that, like, if you're feeling uncomfortable, somebody else can handle that, so that you're not having to come up against that conflict in 2 different ways, right? And I think that we've all just been really clear about, like, if there's an issue, we want to hear about it. We're not about sweeping problems under the rug. And I think that in doing that, we've kind of just created an environment where things are usually talked about before they get escalated to the level of needing a lot of those policies that we put into place. That I think that there is an environment where, like, I feel comfortable just, like, texting a parent and be like, hey, I'm seeing some issues with this. Could we maybe brainstorm it before it becomes a bigger problem? And I think that in doing that, by having those policies up front to begin with, we've created an environment where the talking is more open from the start.
And this is also not an adult culture. It is a child and adult culture. And it's really funny to, like, walk by a group of kids and hear someone say, like, I didn't consent to that stick on my arm, or, you know, something weird like that. I mean, the kids are very open to about talking about their needs and handling things before they get out of control. And then I think talking to adults. But I mean, yeah, like Michelle said, we don't have a lot of interpersonal conflict. And I feel like all of us have been in groups, and you know that when you get people together, you can get kind of cliques and gossipy things. And I mean, we're all human, but I really feel like our group is super socially healthy, in part because people do feel comfortable to just talk to someone if there's an issue. I mean, we're not perfect, but we're pretty healthy.
Yeah, we're not perfect, but also I've been a part of other groups and had other scenarios in the past where we didn't have this, we didn't have policies like this. And I think it's the fact that we have a preparedness. And I really just want to say that Michelle and Chris did, because I joined much later and this was all already enacted. But because of that, I feel like that's what creates the safety and it creates the openness. And I think in some ways prevents issues from escalating. And then also knowing that if there was an issue that did escalate, that there would be appropriate transparency and disclosure, and things would be handled in ways that are not about like excluding people or calling people out, but actually resolving problems.
Any other questions from our audience? All right, well, then I want to just turn it back quickly to Michelle, Chris, and Abby. If is anything else that you want to share with the group, maybe things that we've talked about, brought anything up, just want to open it back to you to share anything else you might want to share.
I guess one thing I would share is that if the reason you're watching this recording later or here today is because you're interested in a homeschool co-op for your own family, we are more than happy to talk to you about our co-op and other resources we know in the area. And even if we're not the right co-op for you, we are happy to share what we know, because I know that it can be really lonely until you find a group of people to homeschool with, and it's a lot easier to do, even if you're only doing it short term, if you've got people that you can talk to and share with, and we would be happy to be that for you or help connect you to other groups.
Yeah, I second that. Absolutely. And thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I want to share that I think our kids have also, especially this year, have really begun to model the things that we've been demonstrating for them as adults. Like we have student council this year that Chris has been facilitating. I started a yearbook club last year, and it's been really cool to see our kids um, take what they've been observing from us and start applying this on their own, and party planning and connecting with people in the group to make sure that we have various things happen. I really loved that this year because the three of us all have kids in high school. And that's something also I would mention is not super common for a lot of homeschool groups. It's usually younger kids, and then they'll, go to high school at a public school. That's what I did. Um, and I think it's really cool that we've been able to create a community that has a lot of the same opportunities that a public school does, and on the layer that they're really getting to stretch their autonomy and collaborate with each other. I think it's really cool.
Awesome. I thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom with us. Chris, can you take it to the next slide?
Yeah. So we'd like to know if everyone likes this format. In the chat, you can just type on a scale from 1 to 5, rank how likely you would be to attend similar workshop on a different topic in the future. If you have any suggestions for future workshops, we're always looking for more great examples to add for the skill shares that we'll have in the future. We'll have at least one more left this year. So yeah, if you have any suggestions for future workshops, please type in the chat and/or put in how likely you would be to attend another workshop like this on a scale from 1 to 5.
So our next workshop is going to be one of our co-op talks, and this is kind of, we consider it like almost a chance for you to get a little bit of information from us, but really just talk about whatever topic is at hand. So this next one is going to be conflict resolution, which I think is relevant to some of what we were talking about today. How do you set up structures to think about conflict in ways that are productive, that invite people to be really comfortable about being honest with each other? And so our next co-op talk, basically the way we do it is we have done a topic, a workshop on conflict resolution before, and that's recorded on our website. So we ask folks to watch that before they come. And then at the workshop itself, we do about a 10-minute really brief presentation, but then really just make it an open conversation. We want folks who come to share their own insights. We'll share some of our insights and just have it to be a really free-flowing conversation there. And that is going to be on Tuesday, October 28th, so just about a month from now from 6 to 7 p.m. That is also going to be virtually on Zoom, and Jenny put the link to register for that in the chat. And then besides that, we'll have one more workshop this year in November on our intro to co-ops. And if you're interested in that or just signing up for our newsletter, you can do that at our website, stl.coop, which is also in the chat. But really appreciate everyone's participation and attendance today. This was a really great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all for being here. It was really, really interesting.
Yeah, thanks to our guests and everyone who came to ask good questions.